Hello and good afternoon. We've just opened up the lobby area and waiting area, so we're accepting everyone who's been waiting patiently through to the main stage. So I'll just give it a few more seconds just to make sure everyone is here and present and ready for this brilliant webinar. So my name is Lola Brooks and I'm part of the ADR UK commissioning team and have been helping to develop our program of work to support the newly and recently published and open for applicants RF 2025, which is our research fellowship funding opportunity. So we've got a webinar here today on one of our data sets, RAPID, and we are very fortunate to have some of the team behind the scenes and somebody here to present the data set itself. Oh, we've got the wrong screen. Apologies. There we go. So RAPID is one of our flagship data sets. And we have built this into our research fellowship funding opportunity. And the reason why we fund research fellowships is that we want to enable policy relevant research using our ADR flagship data. And all of our data is underpinned by our ADR UK flagship framework. And this enables us to help support new users to the data sets. And our program is open to all accredited researchers, irrespective of your career stage or experience with admin data. And we want to build on previous and successful ADR research fellowships and their programs of work. So our ADR UK flagship datas are developed, devised and supported to drive research that benefits society. And the series of webinars that you're here today as part of is to explain the scope of our funding opportunity. We've already delivered this webinar and you can find details of it and watch the recording on it on our website. And we want to showcase the breadth and depth of research possibilities with all of our flagship data sets. And through this, to help researchers develop feasible and robust research agendas based on the composition of each flagship data set, enabling you as potential applicants to engage with those dataset experts, those who are most informed with the ins and outs, the information that's included, what's possible, what are the limitations of each dataset. And we're very fortunate today to have Andrew from the Department of Work and Pensions to talk about the ADR England flagship dataset set RAPID. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen there and welcome Andrew to the webinar and ask him kindly to share his slides. Please do post any questions in the Q&A function and not in the chat, and we will come to questions at the end of Andrew's talk. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk you through the registration and population interaction database. Why me? So I'm Andrew Needham. I've worked in DWP for nearly 40 years. I've used a lot of the admin data that we have available to us. I've done stints in ONS using a database called the Lifetime Labour Market Database, which I developed in 1992 and redeveloped in 2005. And then when I came back to DWP, I developed RAPID. So RAPID sort of first iteration was about 2018. And since then, we have developed it and had a release every year. So we're now talking about release 8, which is available for the first time in the SRS. DWP analysts and other government departments have access to release 9. So what I'm going to do is talk you through what we've got in RAPID. So a little bit of an overview. It's a population-based data set. So it provides longitudinal activity-based population measures from 2010-11 to 2023-24 in the version that's going into the SRS at the moment. And it enables you to look at the whole population that have got a national insurance number. So that is between 79 and 89 million people that are in this data in each of those tax year files. And it enables you to look at what interactions those people have had with employment, benefits, pensions. For Release 9, it also includes some education activities. What it does do is bring together all that information into a coherent, simple summary of what people's interactions have been throughout the year. So you can look and see whether somebody has been on universal credit or has been in employment. And this data would tell you how long that duration of that activity was, which months that activity happened in, and how much money was generated through that activity. So it enables you to look at the interdependencies and overlaps between various economic states, if you like. So you can look at the people that are employed, or people that are employed but are also getting a household benefit, or employed and are also receiving a disablement benefit, or have children, for example. It also provides some household linkages for some people. So for the people that are on a household benefit, like housing benefit or universal credit, it enables you to put the adults together in that household and work out which adults go together at which point in time. Because the data is 100%, it enables analysis of small areas and of small populations. Having said that, because the data is so detailed and has got everybody with a national insurance number in it, we're currently doing some treatment of the data to avoid accidental re-identification. And that bit of work isn't yet finalised, but we hope to have it finalised by the end of this year. That's just to ensure that we are protecting everybody's record. The data is created on records that are anonymised. So when I create this data, I can't see people's name and address. I can't find myself in this data. But there are characteristics within this data that might enable you to identify people with specific characteristics. So that is what we're trying to treat the data for, to avoid accidental re-identification. So what's covered in this data? Well, we've got information about the population. It's a UK-based data set, so it includes records for Northern Ireland, Scotland, England, and Wales. We've got some level of geography. In the data that we create and make available to DWP and other government departments, we have census output area. Whether that level of detail gets into the version that goes into the SRS is part of this treatment process. It might only go as far as medium super output area, for example. It includes children. So a lot of people don't know that children have a national insurance number. They have a child reference number by being part of a child benefit award, which turns into their national insurance number when they reach 16. So it's a good population measure because it covers all adults with a national insurance number and children that have or are part of a child benefit award. It enables some household links for people on household benefits. We've got data from 2010-11 onwards in this version of the SRS, and we create something that is a residency measure. So, I said earlier, we've got between 79 and 89 million people within each of these tax year data sets. They're not all resident. So in order to get to something that resembles a resident population, we look for signs of life within the data, whether that's benefits, employments, pensions, whatever. What's not covered in terms of the population is we don't have all the household links. So if you are just a working person, you can't link together Mr. and Mrs. Smith. We don't have that at the moment. That is something that we're looking at, but we can't do it at the moment. And it's certainly not in this version that's going in the SRS. Special populations. So for example, you might go into prison, and you might go into prison for longer than 12 months. You will be in the data, but you won't necessarily have any signs of life that we are monitoring in this data at the moment. So you may look as though you are non-resident. Also, things like foreign forces, we don't issue them with national insurance numbers, so they're not in this data. Similar to foreign students. Not all foreign students come to this country and have the ability to work, so we don't give them a national insurance number if they don't need to work. In terms of the demographics, we've got dates of birth, we can calculate age, we know sex, dates of death. We only take in records that are alive from the 5th of April 2010. And we also capture information about people that have come to the country and registered for national insurance purposes, but we only get the nationality at the point that they registered. If they subsequently change nationality or gain British citizenship, we don't get to know about that. What's not covered, we don't have anything in this data at the moment about ethnicity. As I've just said, we can't do current nationality for a lot of people. We don't know marital or relationship status, and we don't capture whether there has been a change of gender. In terms of the activities, we can capture durations of the activities that we read into Rapid. We calculate end of month and during the month indicators, and I'll explain what they are in more detail in a bit. We capture the type of benefit people are on. So there are about 16 different benefits payable generally within DWP. We capture employment, self-employment, occupational and personal pensions that are in payment. So those are payments to the people that have either taken early retirement or retired at state pension age, in addition to state pension. And we also capture, for household benefits, the relationship between the people in the household. What's not covered in this data set is the individual employment detail. So if somebody has 4 employments in the year, Rapid will show that they have 4 employments, but it will show the sum of all of those 4 employments. So you will get the pay from all 4 and the employment durations of all 4 and the months that any employments might overlap. What we don't capture, as it doesn't come in the HMRC feed that we have at the moment, is the hours worked, and we don't have anything on qualifications. In terms of the income, we capture all the income from the activities that we're monitoring. So that's benefit income, employment income, self-employment profit, pensions, both state pension and private pension. But we don't cover anything on investment income, savings, maintenance payments, winter fuel payment, although that could be derived because it's paid at a standard rate, and outgoing. So we don't know anything about housing costs or debt. In terms of disability and care, we capture all the disability benefits that are paid by DWP. That isn't the total of people that are disabled. It is only the people that are claiming a benefit for that disablement. But for those people that have claimed, we can look at what their main disabling condition is, and we can make some judgment about how disabled that person might be by looking at the component combinations. So, for example, do they have a mobility component? Do they have a care component or a daily living component? And if they do, is it high, medium, or low? We can tell whether somebody is caring. And for people that are caring, you can tell who is the person that they are caring for and what is their passport benefit. We also get the health journey information from Universal Credit. Now, that doesn't enable you to break it down into what condition they've got, but you would know that this person is on a health journey with Universal Credit. What we don't get at the moment is medical condition for the benefits that have been devolved to Scotland. We get the activity, but we don't get to know what the main disabling condition is. And as I said earlier, we don't get to know if you're disabled and not on benefit. So in terms of benefits of Rapid. It's UK coverage. It's 100% of all the people with an ENO and an overview of their activities in the year. It enables this small area, small population analysis, and you've got the opportunity for partial income estimates, given that we don't capture investment income. You've got this longitudinal element, which enables you to assess trends over time, and the data is easily analyzable. It's simple to understand. If you think of it as an Excel spreadsheet, it's flat file format. There's one row per person per tax year with a column variable for each of the activities. It's analysis ready. It's clean data with no additional linking needed. So you don't have to do any linking to the data once you've got into the SRS. You might want to link tax years together for a particular person, but that's fairly straightforward. There's no cleaning or linking of activity data already done. It enables point-in-time analysis, and it also enables you to look at the transitions between activities month on month. And as I said earlier, it enables analysis at a household level for certain groups. So this is how we build Rapid, essentially. The important bits are in the bottom. In order to create this data set for Release 8, we read in 7,802 individual data sets. And each tax year holds between 79 and 89 million records. So if we start top left, the inputs, we have data coming in sometimes weekly from some of our benefit systems. So job seekers allowance, income support, employment support allowance, pension credit. Those extracts come to us every week. And so to get an accurate income measure from those benefits, I have to go to 53 different extracts to look at what they were paid in each week. Other benefits come to us monthly, so universal credit, bereavement support payments, invalid care, attendance allowance, DLA, get your state pension, personal independence payments, housing benefit, and industrial injuries and industrial death benefit. Some data comes to us 6 weekly. So that's things like the bereavement benefits, maternity allowance, state pension, and the old incapacity benefit and severe disablement benefit. We also get data from HMRC. So this is where all our information on employment, occupational pensions, child benefit, migrant workers scan, self-assessment for the self-employed, and tax credits comes from. It also includes the coronavirus job retention scheme and the self-employment income support scheme data for 2020 and 2021. All of that data is then linked through a DWP owned data set called the Customer Information System. This is the, if you like, our customer spine, which we get a daily extract of, that keeps track of all the people that have interacted with either DWP or HMRC systems. And we take that data as being the definitive source of information on a person's name, date of birth, date of death, and address information. And although I can't see full name and address, that's the system that it's held in. And that is what we then link everything to. And that's what generates our one row per person per tax year. So if you go to the outputs, what we have in the version that's going into the SRS now is 2 sets of data. Tax year based data, and there are 14 at the moment, 14 tax year data sets from 2010-11 through to 23-24. And as long as the person is alive, so we have no date of death, you will make it to that data set. For the relationship data sets, we create relationships for for child benefit, which enables you to link the main payee of child benefit to the child or children, income support, universal credit, pension credit, housing benefit, carers, and tax credits. And what you end up with is, as you create the activities for the claimant, you capture, is there a partner? And if there is a partner, how long does that partnership last within the year, and which months does that partnership happen? So, for example, people have really complicated lives, but what you will find is that you can possibly have somebody on a universal credit claim who is single for 2 months, then partnered with somebody for another 2 months, then partnered with another person for another 3 months, and then has a period that they're single again. All of those relationships are captured with the durations of each and the months which those pairings happened. In terms of what we use this data for, it's really quite heavily used within DWP, but it's now used across government. So it provides all the information for our children in low income families measure, which is the official DWP child poverty measure. It's used by ONS for their migration and population estimates, and it's been used by ONS and Scottish Government and Northern Ireland Government for their census quality assurance. We use it for pension credit take-up. So who looks as though they're eligible for pension credit from this data, but hasn't actually claimed it yet? We're using it in the family resources survey transformation. Why are we asking questions in a survey when actually some of the information that we can get from administrative systems? We use it for benefit expenditure and labour market analysis, which you'll see in a minute. But it's also been used for the indices of multiple deprivation that was published about 2 weeks ago for 2025, where the data from Rapid fed into 4 out of the 7 deprivation measures. As I said before, we've got between 79 and 89 million records within Rapid. This just splits down using the derived resident, non-resident indicator. Using this activity-based approach, how many people we think look as though they're resident because they've had an activity within the year. So what you can see there is that you're getting rid of sort of 17, 18 million records in each year where the person is still alive, they have a national insurance number, but there's nothing in the data that suggests they're still in the UK. These NINOs are kept because if the person has come to the UK, worked for 10 years and then left, they will have paid national insurance contributions. And when they get to state pension age, that contribution will potentially generate a pension for them. And depending on where you emigrate to, some countries make you claim that pension. So Australia and New Zealand, if you've paid contributions in England, will make you claim that pension as part of your state pension in Australia. So how do we create this data? Well, we start with the person, and our starting point is the customer information system. We drop any records that are before the period that we're interested in, and we calculate some key dates. So, for example, we calculate the tax year that somebody was born in, or the tax year that they died in, or the tax year where they reached 16, which we call the date of entry. That is when national insurance liability starts. We also capture the final relevant year, the FRI, which is the last full tax year prior to retirement or death. And we also calculate the state pension entitlement date. As you will probably know, over the course of this data, pension age for women has increased from 60 to 65, and then it increased for everybody to 66 and will increase to 67 and then on to 68. So we calculate all of those dates. We then link the data to the migrant workers scan. That gives us some information about whether somebody has registered from abroad at some stage. So if you're not on the migrant workers scan, and we only have the migrant workers scan from 1978 onwards, I suppose we do have some data from 1975, but essentially, if you're not on the migrant workers scan, we assume that you are a UK national. But that will include anybody who arrived before 1975. So all the Windrush generation and people that came in the 60s in our data will look like UK nationals because we don't have the details of their registration before 1975. If you were a foreign national and registered after 1975, you will be on the migrant workers scan. And at that point, we can work out where you said you came from and what country you were born in, and what your nationality was at the point that you registered. And we can calculate the date that you said you arrived and the date that you actually registered. We then clean the data, and this is perhaps quite important and quite crucial because this is work that you don't have to do in the SRS. It's already done. So we take the data, whether it's DWP benefit data or data that comes from HMRC. We deduplicate the records. We drop records that don't have any national insurance number on them. It's not huge numbers that we drop, but there's nothing we can do with them when we're linking the data together. We format the data into tax years. So, for example, state pension, you would have a start date and potentially an end date, but they might be 20 years apart. We split that start and end date down into tax years so that you can give an activity for each of those years. We then link all those data together. So in the example here, you've got a weekly extract on the left-hand side in blue of income support. In the first extract, we see they're there for 3 days and we pay them £50 in that week. The next extract, we see they're there for 7 days and we pay them £100. At the end of the processing of that tax year, you would roll all of that data up. So everything that appears below the black line is essentially what you would get in Rapid. And it would say this person's been on income support for 28 days and we paid them £420. They also had child benefit of 150 days and we paid them £400 in child benefit. They had 2 employments lasting 250 days and they earned £7,000. Therefore, they've got a total income from these sources of 7,820, and because they've got an activity and they've got a UK address, we think they're resident. So we talked a little bit in the introduction about during the month and end of month indicators. This has been a bit of a game changer, but what this enables you to do is cut the data and look at a point in time or what has happened in a particular month. So in generating the during the month indicators, you look at the real start and end date of a particular activity. This example here is an employment activity. And you say, well, this first employment lasted from the 1st of February 2020 to the 6th of June 2020. Therefore, in the during the month indicators, they were current in employment in April, May, and June. The end of month indicators, they were current at the end of February and they were current at the end of May, but the employment, because the employment ceased on the 6th of June, didn't cover the end of month indicator. They then weren't employed at all July, August, September, October, but then had an employment that started on the 1st of November, which is ongoing. So how that presents in a variable is we put all of these 12 characters together and it changes from 0 to 1 depending on whether they were employed or not. The first character represents April, second character represents May, third represents June, etc. But they don't have to be binary variables. So for universal credit, for example, we've replaced the 0 and 1 with actually a letter that represents the conditionality group that that person might be in each month. So here you can see that somebody's been searching for work and then within the working with no requirements group. Similarly, for disability benefits like personal independence payments, we've repurposed the EOM and DTM again to give you the combination of what their personal independence payments combination was. So when you come to look at this data, the top box that looks a bit like an Excel spreadsheet is 4 different people, each with a different date of birth. One of them is dead. But what you'll then see is this is all tax year 2024, and you'll see that the DTM indicators for employment and the EOM indicators for employment are set. They were employed for 50 weeks. Annual employment amount was £35,000. This is how the data presents. It's really straightforward, and you will get a row whether you're active or not, as long as you are alive. But what this enables you to do, or what these EOMs and DTMs enable you to do, is put all of these together in one long string, should you choose to do so. So you can look at a particular point in time for each year, or you could look at what was happening in a particular quarter, or the duration of a specific type of activity, or reformat it into a calendar year. So what I'll show you now is some of the analyses that we've done using Rapid. So this is our activity-based population measure compared to the ONS mid-year estimate for Release 8. It's worth noting that this scale starts at 60 million. And it's also worth noting that in Release 8, before 2014, we don't have self-employment records that are complete. And in Release 8, we also don't capture employment spells that have got no pay. And that's quite key before 2012. And I'll show you some results from Release 9 where we do include those a little bit later, because that does have an impact on the population measure. So this is our income measure, looking at Release 8 over time. We've gone from 2008 in this particular slide. What you'll notice here for 23-24 is a big uptick, particularly for pensioners. And that was because we uprated pensions in line with inflation. And in the October that we used for the uprating, the inflation rate was over 10%. So pensions, state pension was uprated by, I think it was 10.3%, which is what that increase shows. It's also worth noting that this income measure doesn't include things like child maintenance income, cold weather payments, winter fuel, stocks, shares, etc. This is our employment measure compared to HMRC's real-time information. So this is showing employments at the end of the month, all the way back to 2008. So this data has been generated using those EOM indicators, where the EOM indicator is equal to 1 in each of these particular months. It's worth noting that HMRC's figures don't include people that have got no pay. This is our self-employment measure compared to the Family Resources Survey. What you'll note here is that for 23-24, there's this large grey bar. Because the way self-assessment works, there's a long lag in getting information about the most recent tax year. So for this current tax year that we're currently in, 25-26, the deadline for submitting information isn't until the following tax year. So we generate a proxy measure based on whether the person was self-employed in the previous year. And what we find is that the people that we've given a proxy measure to, the numbers of people looks very similar to what the proxy says. We haven't uprated the amount of profit that they make, we just carry that forward in the proxy. So while the numbers are accurate, the amount of income that they generate may be slightly different. So this is some heat map work, which was started and inspired by the work that we did for the indices of multiple deprivation. So what this is doing is tracking 18 to 59-year-old men in England and Wales between 2014-15 to 23-24, looking at the employment rate for the age group 18 to 59. We've chosen that age group specifically because over that period, state pension age changed and also the requirement to stay in full-time education until 18 changed. So we've kept this measure. But what this shows is the power of this data over time. This is the picture for women. There's two local authorities that immediately stand out here. One is Birmingham, and the other one is Bradford, where the employment rate is particularly low in this measure. And we think some of that might be to do with the culture around whether you work when you've got children. So when we come to the next slide, this is income-related benefits over the same period, again looking at men in the same age group. So this is looking at people that are on, for example, universal credit or job seekers allowance or housing benefit. And what you'll see here is, again, Birmingham and Bradford stand out as being areas where there are high rates of people on income-related benefit. Now, some of these people may also be working. So it's not just that they're only on the income-related benefit, they may be working and getting an income top-up. The picture for women is definitely worse, and I think that this is potentially to do with childcare, that we've kept them resident because they've got children and they have an activity, but they need the income top-up. And again, Birmingham and Bradford and the Northwest are quite high compared to the other regions. Look at it for the people that are 60 plus, and this is a very interesting distribution. So you have a lot of people 60 plus in the middle of London, and that is potentially being driven by housing cost. So pensioners that are perhaps on housing benefit to top up their income because of the housing costs in London. The really interesting stuff is the picture for women 60 plus. So here you can see that the number of, or the rate for women 60 plus who are on a household benefit is much higher than the rate for men. Now, some of that might be being driven by the fact that women generally have worked part-time, or a lot of women have worked part-time and may not have provision of an occupational pension like men would. Again, this is the sort of stuff that you could explore with this data. Do these people that are on an income-related benefit have no pension income? Really, what we're doing here is demonstrating to you what is possible to do. So this is looking at disability. This is just the disability picture for men, again, 18 to 59, looking at where the disabled are. And as you can see here, that there is a big take-up of disability, particularly in Wales and the north of England, where heavy manufacturing, this South Wales, Merthyr Tydfil around there is all ex-mining community who are potentially now all on disability benefits. If you look at the care picture, it follows the same pattern, except care is all women. There's hardly any men doing any caring in this measure. So you've seen some of the analysis that is possible. Are we going to keep doing this data? Well, DWP is committed to continuing the production of RAPID. We use it for our own functions, and it's used by other government departments for their functions. So we are committed to doing it. We're committed to supporting the development of RAPID and making sure that it's available to researchers via the ONS Secure Research Service. At the moment, we create the data annually, and we're committed to doing that. And each new release, and I'll show you some data for that in a minute, includes additional tax years and usually adds some additional features and some new data sources. DWP and HMRC are going through huge transformations in terms of data platforming, moving from legacy systems to new systems. That presents a whole host of challenges, one, getting data out of the new systems, but it also presents opportunities because we've got new information that we haven't had before. So we're trying to keep abreast of all of that with each new development. And we are committed to ensuring that with each new release, we consider it for inclusion in the SRS. So this is release 9, which hopefully will get to the SRS sometime next year. And what you can see here is the difference between release 8, which is the dotted line, which is currently in the SRS, and what we get out of release 9. And that is because we've added some new activities in. So for release 9, we've added the 24-25 tax year. We're hoping that for release 9, we'll be able to put 2008-9 and 9-10 into the SRS as well. But we've also included an education activity flag, which improves the residency measures. We've also included for release 9 employment spells that are not supported by pay, and that's quite critical before 2012. Before 2012, there was no obligation for employers to submit pay and tax information for their employees if there was no tax or national insurance liability. So those records historically could have come through as being no pay records. We've included them in release 9, and that has a significant impact on the population measure. We've also included relationship data and partner data for employment support allowance and job seekers allowance. The other thing that we're hoping to do for release 9 is make it linkable to other data that is in the SRS. At the moment, the data that is in the SRS or going into the SRS is a standalone data set that cannot be linked with anything else. We're looking at the possibilities of changing that and making it linkable to other data. So, areas of research interest. As a department, these are our 4 goals. Enable people to get into work and ensuring that there's employment opportunity for all. Tackling child poverty and ensuring financial security. Ensuring decent, secure retirement income for everybody, and ensuring independence and control for all disabled people. These are our goals. And if you were going to do any analysis or research, these are our top priorities. That's what our department exists for. And there's an awful lot to go at in Rapid that will help feed into some of these research questions that we have. I'll not go through this, but it's on the slide pack. There are links here that will take you to DWP's areas of research interest, etc. So, as an example of the sorts of questions that we would be looking at, things like what are the dependencies and overlaps between employment and benefit? What are the barriers to employment, and how does geography, health and childcare play into those journeys? What do local employment patterns look like pre and post COVID? There's a whole host of stuff that would be beneficial for people to look at using this data. I've nearly finished. So project feasibility, things to consider. When you're making your application to look at this data, I think you need to think about, is the information that you need in the data? Is there likely to be any bias to the data that will stop you doing what you're wanting to do? For example, this version of the data doesn't include education activities. Will that stop you doing what you want to do? People who go quiet. So at the moment, there are people that will go quiet and may appear as non-resident. They will be in the data. My mother-in-law is one of them. She stopped work at 60, claimed a pension at 66, but didn't do anything in the intervening period. She hasn't left the country, but because she's gone quiet, she won't be marked as resident within this data. Does the data treatment impact or restrict what you want to do? So if the treatment says, actually, we're not going to have single age, we're going to have age bands, or we're only able to go down to local authority level and not to medium super output level, does that restrict what you want to do in your analysis? Derivation. Can you derive your measures accurately? If the data doesn't hold exact dates, does that restrict what you want to do? Can you derive rules to change the residency status? So I've done some work with the Office of National Statistics specifically to cater for my mother-in-law problem. She's not a problem, but where somebody's gone quiet but hasn't left the country. You can derive residency rules that will keep people resident that have certain characteristics. You might want to do the same for other types of activity. Size. Rapid is huge. As I've already said, it's got 80 plus million people in it for each tax year, and each of those data sets has got 220 plus variables in it. You will very quickly get to a data stage where if you start linking years together, the data will become unmanageable. It will become too big to do anything with it. Think about a data diet. Restrict your data to only what you need. It'll make your processing quicker. Tempus fugit. Can you realistically deliver your project in the time that you have? Pace yourselves and don't bite off more than you can chew. This data is big and you could end up doing 1,000 dissertations from it, but you can't do them all at once. So just think about the time that you've got to do this. This is just about gaining access to the SRS and becoming an accredited researcher, which we've kept in, but I don't need to talk about that because I think we've got other webinars that deal with that specifically. And this is the final slide. So documentation. Once we have decided how we're going to treat the data, there will be a new version of the documentation. It will be hosted in the same place as this link in this slide. But the documentation that is currently there highlights what sorts of treatment that are currently being considered. It's in section 4 of the current documentation. If you have feedback on the proposals as they currently stand, please feed back to the ADR Curation website. And in terms of application support or applicant support, if it's about the fellowship, the ADR Fellowship email. If it's about the SRS infrastructure, contact the SRS customer support at ONS. And if it's about data and feasibility of your project, that goes to the ADR Curation email address. And that's Rapid in a nutshell. Hopefully I've left enough time for some questions. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Andrew. That was an amazing talk, and I'm going to pick up one of your phrases there, which is data diet, when we're thinking about researchers not being over ambitious and making sure they've got the right variables that they want to use and have defined them properly. I like that saying. Thank you. I've also learned a huge lot, and now I'm hugely jealous of anyone who gets to use Rapid in research because I've got incredibly excited about the possibilities. During the talk, we've had a continuous and constant stream of some brilliant questions. Some of those have been answered as you've kind of unpacked the information, both the data sets and the possibilities. So I'm just going to hold them, but we will be sharing the slides and the recording after and creating a Q&A function of everything that's raised in the discussion going forward. Michael, would you like to come and join the platform? My colleague Michael's going to take us through the question section.
Thank you. So the first question, there's quite a few questions to try and get through as many as we can. The first question, the Rapid documentation states that it cannot be linked to other data sets. would it be possible to link it at a higher level, for example, to incorporate local authority level data, such as population by age?
The version that's currently in the SR or going into the SRS will be non-linkable. And some of that is because of the concerns about re-identification. So once we've got our treatment sorted, we can then start thinking about actually, could we link this to things like, for example, LEO data or other local authority type data.
Lovely, thank you. Following on from that one, is the annual employment summary sufficiently detailed to classify individuals as employed, unemployed, or economically inactive, or is it only suitable for estimating the total annual earnings and benefits for individuals?
We don't have the monthly earnings, but you can tell who is employed, unemployed, or employed and on an income-related benefit, or potentially inactive using the EOM and DTM indicators. Yeah, because all of those indicators are generated from real start and end dates. So you can tell whether somebody is employed in the month.
Thank you. Next question. How granular is date of birth? I.e., could we trace WASPI women by looking at exact date of birth in these data?
That will be dealt with as part of the treatment as to whether we put the full date in or whether we put a selection of ages at various points in the year. So I can't answer that definitively. It might just be month and year, or it might be a selection of ages derived at various quarters.
Okay, thank you. Next question. This is more of a clarification. Is it at a monthly level or annual? I thought you mentioned monthly at the beginning, but it looks like you only get annual employment or income.
We get the data annually, but you can break that down into what they were doing in each month. We don't have monthly pay. We don't generate at the moment monthly benefit payment either. It is an annual summary that enables you to look at each month in terms of what that person has been doing throughout the year. But we only have annual measures of income.
Okay, thank you. Next question. What is the difference between RAPID and the British Household Panel Survey?
RAPID's 100%. So it's got everybody with a national insurance number, whereas the panel survey is a survey.
Next question, this is regarding tax credits. Are tax credits including income from different elements, for example, childcare support included, and are tax-free childcare receipts in RAPID?
No, it includes the tax credit amount that is paid, whether that's child tax credits or working tax credits, and they are separate, but we don't take in the information on in any more granular detail than that.
Thank you. Next one. If you disappear from the record for 1 year and then you come back to the UK, could we see this in the data, or would the person be removed from the data if they have left for more than 12 months?
They're still in the data. So you end up with rows where people are alive but have no activity. In that year where there's no activity, potentially we would class them as being not resident. We developed residency rules for ONS where you had 3 years and the middle year had no activity. Actually, what was the likelihood that that person had left? And you infer a residency in that middle year.
Okay, thank you. Next one. What might be the sample size if I need to make it balanced panel to ensure each observation is present every year?
Well, every observation will be present every year unless they've died. So you are in the data as long as you are alive at some point in the year. If you die in December, you'll be in the data up until the March, but in the following year, you won't be in the data.
Okay. Next question. Does the data include applications and reassessments?
No. It is based on whether they have been awarded or not. We don't carry forward the assessment periods or anything that's been disallowed, for example. So if you've made a claim and it's been disallowed, that's not in the data.
Okay. Next question. Regarding the heat map, is gender in the data?
Yes. Well, sex is in the data. I think gender can be changed, but we don't capture gender, but we do capture sex at the point that they've registered.
Thank you. Next one. How can I check the feasibility of my proposal before submitting my application?
ADR web email address, and they will submit analysis to the proposal to DWP, and we will assess whether it's possible to do from the data.
Next question. If people, quote, go quiet, are their deaths still recorded? What about if they go abroad?
So this is an interesting feature of the data. If you look at the data, you will find that there are people that are 130 odd years old. They're obviously not alive unless they've found some secret that I'd quite like to get hold of. If somebody dies in the UK, there is a feed into the customer information system from the Registrar General, so we get to know about it. Generally, if somebody goes abroad and they're in receipt of a state pension, we would get to know about the death potentially from family. However, if you came to the country 20 years ago from Poland and you went back 10 years ago but didn't tell us and subsequently died, there's no mechanism to capture a date of death from abroad because nobody would know to get in touch with DWP or HMRC or the Registrar General. So you end up with people in the data who are unfeasibly old and have died, but we haven't captured a date of death. But if the death happens in the UK, we get to hear about it.
Can I just jump in there, because that's quite that's a bias in the data, and I assume it's a very small percentage that this will kind of equate for. Do you have like a bearing of kind of these kind of, I guess, noisy entries or noisy variables? I get a feel for this across the data at all?
By combining the data, you can work out when somebody last interacted with the
Perfect.
system, and
Perfect.
then what is the likelihood that actually they're still here. If they're not here, I mean, this data will not track people specifically who go abroad and die. That's not what it's for.
No.
But you should be able to weed those out, the people that you genuinely think are not here because they haven't interacted with anything for over 10 years or 5 years even.
That's handy to know, thank you. And I guess there's been a couple, just because we're a bit short on time, there's a couple of questions that have come up here regarding code potentially for analysis. Is that in the documentation that has been collected or used today, or something that could be captured going forward if researchers are using that to share their code? I think that's the question that's come up just now.
It's not in the documentation at the moment, and to some degree there is nothing wrong with sharing the code, but it would depend on
what it is,
the treatment.
Yep.
To some degree.
Similarly, in terms of kind of, I think it's like based around the use and the functionality of Rapid, and I get the impression it will be in the documentation, which is the security level that's required to access Rapid. Does it have to be in safe pods, or there are other avenues that researchers could access the data?
That's an SRS question, so I'll defer on that one.
We do have Michael from ONS in the audience. Do you know the security level at all, please, Michael?
Not yet, unfortunately. Okay. Yeah, sorry.
is this something that we can update researchers going forward? So do please sign up to our newsletters and keep an eye on the project page for this ADR flagship data set. All information will be updated there as it kind of becomes available. Just to quickly cover one of the questions that's come up in different ways, which is this kind of new version of the flagship. I think you referenced it as version 9 or refresh 9.
Yeah.
Is that going to be made available for the fellows in kind of as they go through the process of might be awarded to move forward with, and is that version linkable?
Our hope is to include release 9. Once we've got release 8 in, we've worked out how we're going to treat it in a generic way so that we can apply the same treatment to release 9. The intention is to put release 9 into the SRS sometime next year. We would look to include 2008, 2009 and 24-25 tax year and all the additions that release 9 brings with it. And we will look at whether we can make it linkable. To some degree, that's not my decision. To some degree, it is dependent on ONS and HMRC being in agreement to make it linkable to the data that's already in the SRS.
Amazing, thank you. There's been quite a few other questions that have come forward, but I'm afraid we're running out of time. If it's okay, we will share them with yourself, Andrew, and the team, just so we can pinpoint them and talk about them and discuss them. Then we will share them going forward on our website for everyone to see. And just to note for anyone who is in the webinar who joined late, we will be sharing the video, or if you couldn't attend today, the slides will also be available on our website. And Karen has helpfully posted all the key email addresses within the Q&A function, and we will also make sure that everyone who is here is aware of them if they need to. Just to flag, the opportunity now is officially open on the UKRI funding website with a link in the QR code there, and we also have a link to our webpage that holds all the information on all of the documentation that we've collected and developed to support you as applicants, also the different support mechanisms that we have developed, established and continuing on for researchers to support them in their use of the flagship dataset and within our fellowship opportunity. We've had a huge number of webinars that we've delivered during this pre-announcement and now full opportunity opening, including the opportunity briefing, writing a good funding application and thinking about the kind of translation of kind of concepts and thoughts and ideas into research agendas from the community catalyst. So please do review webinars or have a look at the slide decks if you're interested, and get in contact with us and the ADR curation team at ONS if you have feasibility questions. Otherwise, I will bring this webinar to a close and thank Andrew so much for his time today and the delivery of a brilliant webinar. It's got me hugely excited of what's to come, and I look forward to reading everyone's application next year once they come through. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.